Hi, it's Rob from the Bush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint a Fire Angels Primaris Intercessor. The first colour we're going to use for the Fire Angel is Vallejo Black. I'm going to use this to do all the seals and the casing for his Boltgun. There's not too many areas on this and they're all pretty easy to do. Give them a nice smooth layer of black, then we can move on to the next one. So now we're going to start working with a little bit of Citadel Retributor armour. There isn't too many parts that we're going to use on this, just the crux terminatus on his arm there, and also a few little details like the little thing holding the bones on his hip there. Generally not too many bits on this miniature itself. Now I quite like the lore behind these, them being passionate followers of like the Imperial Creed and thinking of the Emperor as a god, so they're quite pally with the Inquisition and the Sisters of Battle. Next up we're going to be using a little bit of Citadel Mephiston Red. Now we're going to use this to do a few little details like parts of the knee pad, the little shield and things like that. Now looking at the pictures in the Badab War book, they're quite keen on their separate iconography, and I think this goes quite a way towards showing a few little differences between them and normal Space Marine chapters, because it does say that a lot of chapters are a bit suspicious of them because they work so closely with the Inquisition and the Sisters of Battle, because of their belief that the Emperor is a god, well, that kind of stuff. Now we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo Model Air Chrome. I'm going to use this on the Boltgun to make that silver different from the actual armour. But yeah, it's a very interesting chapter. I thought it would be quite a nice one to do. It's a little bit different. I think it's the first chapter I've painted in a metallic. But I do like the colour scheme for them, so I'm tempted for when a new 40k box turns up, I am tempted to do a little bit of them as the Fire Angels. Next up we're going to use some Citadel Rakarth flesh. I'm going to use this on the purity seals and the bones in the little container at the back there. Next up is Citadel Mournfang Brown. I'm going to use this to do any pouches and the holster. If the Boltgun's got a sling, then use it to do that as well. Yeah, very interesting chapter. So I'm probably going to paint up a few more of these. I've not thought of any other chapter that I'd like to go with for the new miniatures in the new box set coming out. But time will tell, see how that goes. Now we're going to start the shades. I'm going to start with Citadel Nuln Oil. I'm going to use this on all of the silvery metallics. You can give a good coating of this over pretty much all the models, only really the red, the gold, the Rakarth flesh, and the black. Oh, and the holsters there, the Mournfang brown, that don't need it, but the vast majority of the model, you can give a decent coat of this too. So next up we're going to use some Citadel Druchii Violet. This is going to be to do all of the reds. They are quite an interesting chapter in terms of markings. They have the chapter badge on each shoulder, and they have their company and squad markings and squad designations on the knee pads, which there isn't really enough space for either, or for all of them I should say, so they seem to have a random selection of them according to the first Badab Warbook, but they really are quite fun to paint. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Seraphim Sepia. I'm going to use that on all of the Rakarth flesh. So the purity seals and the parchments and the bones inside the little container on his hip. Give them a good dose of Seraphim Sepia. So the next colour that we want to use is Citadel Leadbelcher. Now when you're applying this, you want to leave the underside of sort of the legs, the arms, the power pack, so that they're shaded, and only apply this to the top and sides to reapply the colour to that. And the shaded areas underneath will give them that added little bit of darkness and dullness. So it looks like the rest of it is catching the light a little bit more. Once you've finished that, we're going to add Citadel Ironbreaker. It's possibly the first time I've used this on a miniature in a video. I've had it for ages, not used it, figured I may as well on this one. This is a nice highlight colour for the Leadbelcher. Works well, so you can put this on and it gives it a little bit more of a shine and sets off the silver of his armour really, really well. Once you've reapplied all the highlights, we're going to move on to the next colour. Now we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo Modeler Chrome again. We'll use this to highlight the upper sides and the upper edges of his armour. We're also going to use it to highlight the Aquila on his chest. You can also use it if you want to do some edge highlights to his Boltgun, but make sure you're only highlighting the edges which will be catching the light. You don't want to highlight every single edge on it, otherwise it doesn't look like the light's catching it correctly. So with his arm complete, it's got a really good shine on there. We're going to move on to the red and use Citadel Mephiston Red to reapply the colour back to his knee pads, the trim of his armour and the shield. Also going to use some of this on the purity seals to give them their colour back. Again, remember to leave some of the shade on the undersides. You only want to be giving the red back to the areas that would be catching the light. Now we're going to mix a little bit of Citadel Fire Dragon Bright with the Mephiston Red. And we're just going to start to highlight all of the red areas. Now remember, when you're highlighting, you want to be thinking about where the light's going to catch it if it's coming down from above, and only highlight those areas. Like so. Now we're going to add a little bit more Fire Dragon Bright to that mix. I'm just going to do another highlight on the red. So this is mainly on the top sides of all the red areas that you want to be applying this, so it does look like the light's catching it. Also do a few of the underside edges just to make it look like there's a little bit of light catching them as well. Now I'm going to use some Citadel Dawnstone Red I'm going to apply this to the purity seals just to give them another highlight and make them stand out a little bit. By giving it the Wazdaka red over the orangey colour, it also makes them different so they don't blend in with the other reds on the miniature. Like so. Next up, we're going to use a little bit of Agrax Earthshade. Because one thing I failed to do was shade the gold. So we're going to do the Agrax Earthshade onto all the gold on the model. And we can start working on that. Now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Rakarth flesh and start on the scroll work and the purity seals. Now with these you want to be giving the colour back to it, leaving some of the Seraphim Sepia in the recesses so that you've got those creases in the paper and the shadow around where the scrolls and the seals are on top of each other. When we come back we'll have all those finished off. Now we're going to use some Vallejo white, mix that in with the Rakarth flesh. I'm going to start to highlight all the parchments and the scroll work. On this you want to be just doing the top edges and the areas on the ridges of those purity seals where the light will be catching the paper more, or the parchment. Add a little bit more white to that and give it another highlight. This one is really just going to be on the very top edges and the extreme edges of it, just to give them that final little bit of brightness where the light's catching it. Like so. Now we're going to move on to Vallejo Black. I'm going to start doing some of the patterning on him. So you've got like the little bits of scroll work on the knee, or the little bits of writing on his knee pad here. We're also going to start doing numbers and patterns and things like that on these other parts here. That bit's got stripes on. We're going to do the writing on the purity seals too. I'll be throwing up a video of how to do the numbers that I'm going to be painting on him. So when you see those numbers appear on his knee pads, and also the chapter badges, those videos will be coming in the next few days. Now continuing with the black, we're going to do the battle line markings for him, which is just the big arrowhead on the knee pad there. That's like the old tactical marking or the battle line marking that they would be using on the shoulder pads of most normal codex chapters. Like so. Now we're going to be using black again. We're going to be doing a bit more detail work on him. This time we're going to be doing his squad number on his shoulder here, where they've got the shield. I figured I'd do the company number on his knee, and then we're just going to paint on the squad number onto this part here. Using those kind of funky numbers that they do in Games Workshop for different things, where they have the little lines down the side and a little bit of flair to them, which I think is quite cool. And just touch that up with a bit of the previous colour, like so. So now we're going to be using a little bit of Citadel Ushabti bone to go over these bones. Now previously we've used a little bit of Rakarth flesh then Seraphim, Sepia, Rakarth flesh again, and now we're just going to highlight these with a bit of Ushabti bone to give them a bit of colour. Now working on the gold, we're going back to Citadel Retributor armour. Making sure you leave the shade in the recesses, you're going to reapply the Retributor armour to give each of the sections a nice gold colour. Do want to leave the undersides really, so that they're not as shiny as the rest of it, because they'd obviously have the shade there. So just do the top edges, and the sides, leave the bottom edges with the shade on there. Now we're going to use some Citadel Liberator gold. Use this to highlight the Retributor armour. Now you want to think about where the light is going to be catching the gold and giving it a shine on those edges and those sides. Again, the only thing you really want on the underside of anything is if there's going to be some sort of detail like a ridge or a little lump or something like that on there that is going to catch the light. Now we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo Modeler Chrome mixed with Liberator Gold. I'm going to do one final highlight. This is going to be to highlight the top edges and the edges, the surface that will be catching the light as an extreme highlight. I'm going to use Citadel Mournfang Brown and reapply that to the pouches. So you just want to be reapplying this to these areas, making sure that you leave the Agrax Earthshade in the recesses. When you look at the holster here, you do see there's two little kind of concave areas on the holster on the front there. So always leave the shade there and just do the middle bit and around the sides of it. So you've got those two darker patches on the front of the holster. Now we're going to mix some Rakarth flesh from Citadel in with the Mournfang Brown. I'm going to start trying to highlight the areas where this is going to be scuffed as though it's brown leather and it's just been scuffed and chafed from years of use. Like so. Now we're going to add a little bit more Citadel Rakarth flesh to the previous mix. I'm going to do the final highlights on this. Again, this is sort of like adding it where you get scuffed leather, and it's got the kind of lighter shade of leather underneath where you've scraped it on something. And that's the kind of effect that we're going for here. So now we're going to use Vallejo Black, and we're going to use this to work on each shoulder pad to put the chapter badge on there. So you start off with a vertical line, then you want to do a horizontal line, crossing that straight through the middle, so that you've got a symmetrical cross, or as close to symmetrical as you can do, or can be bothered doing. And once you've got that cross on, you're putting a little tiny cross on the end of each section of it. So on the vertical, you're going to have a little cross piece at the top and the bottom, and on the horizontal, you're going to have exactly the same. I will be posting the chapter badge video this coming Sunday, so you'll see the full thing start to finish. Now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Leadbelcher, and we're just going to tidy up the shape of that cross and make sure it's all square and the sections in black are even. And the reason I rotate it so much when I'm doing this is because I always want to try and drag the brush away from the point, and to get some of these sections you do need to rotate it so that you can get that straight line to give it a kind of look like that. Now with that done, we are now going to use a little bit of Citadel Mephiston Red, and this is going to be used to colour in that cross. Now you want to leave a little bit of black around the edge of each of these sections, so you're going to colour it in with red and leave a black outline around it. And this is the symbol that you want to be doing on each shoulder pad. As chapter badges go, it's a pretty straightforward one and a pretty easy one to do, which is a blessing after doing the Blood Angels one last time. Next we're going to be using a little bit of Vallejo German Grey. I'm going to paint his eye lenses with that. That's the first time I've done grey eye lens, but the principle is exactly the same as you would do with red or yellow or green or blue. So we're going to give each lens a smooth coat of Vallejo German Grey. Now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Mechanicus Standard Grey, and you're going to highlight a kind of half crescent at the back of the lens there, so from the very corner down to about 2/3 of the way along the lens, like so. Then we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Dawnstone, and we're going to highlight the Mechanicus Standard Grey. Again, you want to make sure that when you put this on that you are leaving the Mechanicus Standard Grey visible around the edges of it, mainly the top edge. And then finally we're going to use a little bit of white to do a really fine line to highlight the Dawnstone, and also a spot at the front as a reflection. So that's the lines on to highlight the Dawnstone. I'm going to get a tiny little bit of white back on the brush. I'm just going to put a spot on each eye lens. It's using an Army Painter Wargamer character brush, and that is the finished Fire Angels Space Marine. That's a really fun model to paint, that one. The silver is the first time I've done silver armour, but I do like the look of it at the end. I'm quite pleased with how he turned out. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to our other social media linked below. Thanks very much.